G'day everybody, it's Rob from Fireflight Photo. Today we're going to have a look at how we might make a bendy-like plank. A plank that is will deform based on dynamic weight placed on it. And then I also had a look to see if it was adaptable enough to turn it into a springboard. So here we go. So here's a look at the underlying items that make up this springy or bendy board or plank, right? And basically there's no previous reference I had to how I might do this. So I actually made these linkable sections, and then I control the amount of bending based on binds, which gives this really cool dynamic look. So I made these kind of interconnecting boxes that are going to make up the length of the plank. Now we're using PhysX, and we're going to use the hull type of compound by element. So it's really important that you understand how to construct your poly models so that you can have penetrating items that don't eject themselves from where they penetrate into another model, like the hinge section. Binds versus no binds interaction. So here we see the construction of the cart. It's basically just a whole lot of compound elements, right, so that we can get simple physics animation. The two blue cylinders are what pushes the cart along, and each set of wheels is made up of two wheels and a shaft that just sit in those slots on the cart, and they'll animate and rotate based on the cart being pushed along. So if you want to try and duplicate this flow, I'm going to show you about 6 different screens. They'll have explanations, they'll have all the settings, and they'll even have rough sizing. Here we just take a quick look at the plank and how it's laid out, and we explain a little bit about that. Then we go on to look at the cart, and I give rough dimensions in case you're trying to recreate it. Now these are just all, physics compound shapes from elements, right? And the idea here is the wheels are going to sit in those slots, and then they'll just spin naturally when the cart gets pushed along. And the wheels are made up of 2 cylinders with a shaft in the middle. Again, it's physics shape, compound by elements. I explain all that here, and the idea is that this is actually a rolling set of wheels, and once it's in the slot, it'll just rotate naturally when it gets pushed along by those blue cylinders. Now we take a quick look at the weights, the boxes that make the plank bend, and most of this done by doing a mass override and adding a lot of mass to these boxes. And we have a couple of hidden elements that we don't see when we're rendering it. The support boxes are just physics mesh shapes, and then we got this hidden push bar that pushes the box across onto the plank, and we got these 2 hidden blue cylinders that push the cart along. And finally, any settings that I changed in the main tyFlow settings, but really it was just about finding the right time step, and also maybe the sub steps for the physics. But that's how this one was laid out. In case I didn't make it clear, we're actually applying a tyParticle skin modifier, and it was shown on the first screen, and I've highlighted it here, and we actually turn off the display and render in the operator for the plank, so we're only seeing the tyParticle skin. So the question then became, is this reusable? So I wanted to make like a springboard now, a bouncy springboard. I used 2 mesh elements to create like what looks like clamps the board in place, because mesh elements don't move. And then I just removed a few of the underlining blocks, joining blocks that we created, and here's the springboard. Well, that kind of leads to another question. What other things can we bend? And if we bend them, can we hold them and keep them bent, for example? Let's take a look at that. So there are probably many different ways we can achieve this kind of bendy post result. I didn't really have any previous references, so I just kind of came up with my own method. So I think what's important for me here is the box hits the post bends at a particular spot. At a certain point, the post holds its shape, so we get a bent post. If we don't do the binds, we leave it a springy post, right? And then on this particular video, you can see that the post actually ends up rocking on the base but doesn't fall over. So if we kind of almost play it in real time, you get this kind of pretty cool bendy, rocky post. So how did we do that, or how did I do that? Well, so what we're looking at here at the post is the particle skin, right? So if we turn off the particle skin, alright, then we get the underlying tyFlow elements, the cylinders here. And I decided to break mine into multiple cylinder segments, some with spaces down here at the bottom. And that just means, in a way, by doing it this way, I'm controlling where the post is going to bend. So the bigger the gap, the less cylinders, maybe I can get more dramatic looks. And then once it's bent into a particular position, then I'm doing a second set of binds that actually holds it in that position. So if we turn off the display geometry for a second, and we just look at our binds, these are our binds that are occurring here in the first section. And I'll explain why there's 5 binds here, because I've got 4 additional cylinders that help lock this to the base, right? And then as we go along at a certain time frame where I'm happy with the bend and the curvature, then I'm having this second physics bind take over with further reach and a lot more binds. And you can really see the difference there, right? Before we hold, and then the binds after we hold, and that's how we hold it in position. The reason I'm kind of using 5 cylinders for the base, a big one, and then 4 small ones, is it actually now gives me 5 bind points, which means it really locks itself to the post, right? And the way that I'm helping this from not just falling over is, remember, in some essence, mass doesn't matter in tyFlow unless it's between tyFlow particles. So when we kind of come over here and look at this physics shape here, we can see that I've given this base, all the parts of the base, which is the 5 cylinders, right? I've given them a lot of mass relative to the post itself, right? The post itself here is at 1. All these others are at 100. That just means that this becomes like a really heavy weight at the bottom of the post, and that's essentially what keeps it from falling over, but still gives it this dynamic as if it rocked on its foundation kind of movement. But anyway, you can see overall it's a fairly simple flow. We got a physics collider box, we got the post base, and we got the elements that are inside the post that we then skin with a tyFlow skin. I manually override the binding at a certain point wherever I'm happy with the collision. Here I'm doing it on frame 30, right? I have the secondary binding, which is a lot stronger and a lot longer and a lot more of them, and that's what holds the post in place. So this principle that I used here pretty well applies to the other bendy ones we're going to look at. So the bendy pole that springs back and forth, the only difference with that compared to the setup we just looked at is that we don't use secondary binding to hold it in place. So to close out this tutorial, we just have a look at the flow for the bendy U-post. It's the same kind of principle. I've got a bit of a concrete slab here that's bound to our black bases. That's because in this instance I don't want anything to move. I've used the same sort of base layout for the posts to ensure they don't move. I'm trying to control where the bend occurs, so I've got multiple segments of my bent pipe here that's then skinned. Alright, and once I get the angle of the result I want, then I'm locking it in place by doing secondary binds at that particular timing. So it's just a variation of what we've already seen, but you can see that there's some fun to be had here trying to bend and manipulate stuff. I hope you enjoy this tutorial, and have a good one, everybody.